Right now, Fox 5's Crime in the City. Here are the crimes across the 5 boroughs. We begin in the Prince Bay section of Staten Island, where a 14-year-old student waiting for sports practice to start after school was shot outside a public high school.
As of this morning, at least 5 police cars are standing by outside of Tottenville High School. Police say that 14-year-old boy was not the intended target. Officials say that teenager was standing outside of the high school waiting for sports practice to begin when gunfire erupted. Police releasing this new video of 5 people wanted in connection to a shooting outside Tottenville High School on Staten Island. The shooting unfolded during dismissal. A student was shot in the ankle. Police believe the 14-year-old victim was not the intended target. The incident leaving students and parents rattled.
She called me that screaming, hysterical, crying, it was shooting. Just hearing the screams was just bone chilling, like my heart dropped. But I knew I had to stay calm for her because I needed to make sure she was able to think and act fast and just continue being safe.
Police say 5 to 7 shots were fired by the suspects. One of those shots also hit an MTA bus that was stopped in front of the high school. Luckily, no one on the bus was injured.
Now we're confident the police will do their job. I think they have some ideas of who did it. And unfortunately, with the laws we have in this state, things like raise the age. If these kids are 15, 16 years old, they'll be let out sooner than any of us would like.
And over in the Bronx, detectives putting out new surveillance video of a wild shootout. Last Friday, 2 people stepped out of park Jeep along Bronx River Avenue when all of a sudden a separate group began shooting at them. The driver pulls out a gun and fires a few shots back before hopping back in and driving off. According to NYPD stats, shootings are down over 14% compared to this same time last year. But felony assaults are up 14%. Last night, Mayor Adams held a community meeting to discuss public safety.
We took over 5,000 guns off the streets of the city of New York, arrested thousands of people. We have a 27-year high for felony arrests in this city. These numbers are unbelievable.
While the NYPD has taken thousands of guns off the streets, the mayor says more still needs to be done so New Yorkers can feel safe. And the incident outside of Tottenville High School, obviously very traumatic for not only parents and students, so there will be counselors available today. So far, no arrests have been made in this incident.
We now go to Jamaica, Queens, where a 14-year-old boy was stabbed outside a McDonald's.
It happened around 1 o'clock this afternoon in front of a McDonald's on Hillside Ave in Jamaica. The teenage victim was taken to the hospital and is expected to survive. Police say the suspect is a 16-year-old who knew the victim.
Down in the financial district in Lower Manhattan, the NYPD arrested a woman in a subway stabbing.
Police quickly made an arrest in this case, a woman facing multiple charges this evening. She was charged with assault and harassment. As for the victim, a good Samaritan who was just trying to help his fellow New Yorkers, he was taken to the hospital. We're told he is in stable condition. Now, speaking with riders here today, they tell me they're on edge. Police have arrested 27-year-old Takira Hester of Brooklyn for the stabbing of a man on a train early Wednesday morning.
This was a terrible incident.
According to police, it happened just before 6 a.m. on a southbound 4 train. Authorities say the female suspect started harassing and spitting on passengers. A 31-year-old man tried to stop her, but as the Good Samaritan intervened, the suspect stabbed him in the back and neck. Once the train approached the Brooklyn Bridge City Hall station, the woman took off.
Oh my God. Yeah, this is why you just mind your business in New York City.
This is the latest subway attack in recent days. What's worse, the victim, an innocent New Yorker who was just trying to do the right thing. The random and unprovoked attacks have many riders we spoke with on edge.
I'm really scared. I'm really scared about it.
It's real scary that you have to keep watching over your shoulder for, people throwing you over in the train tracks.
But Mayor Adams has said it's false perception that the situation underground is out of control, saying this morning in a system of millions, there are only a handful of crimes being committed.
We're going to continue to go after those 6 felony crimes a day that we're witnessing. But I know that 3.5 million people use our system every day without any encounters.
Saying crime is down on the subways, lower than pre-pandemic levels.
Index crimes in the subway system right now, this year, 2022, are lower than 2019, 2018, 2017, and the last 10 years.
This past weekend, the mayor and Governor Kathy Hochul announced their new plan to fight subway crime. One of the solutions, deploying more police officers into the transit system, although he admits they can't be at every station.
We are strategically placing those officers during the ridership times, during where we see the crimes are taking place.
I see police officers, but it always happens when they're not around.
And the mayor telling me this morning that his goal is to get to zero crime in the subway system. New Yorkers tell me that a lot has to change for that to happen.
Up in the Washington Heights section of Manhattan, a pregnant teen was shot while sitting in a car.
Well, even at this hour, police are still searching for the 5 masked gunmen that opened fire at students at dismissal. And this incident, one of 3 shootings in which innocent people were injured.
The crimes are going up. We need help. We need more help on the trains, the streets, get the city back how it used to be.
You can hear the sentiment echoing across the boroughs. 3 of the 5 experiencing gun violence in a 24-hour period. It started in Bed-Stuy Monday around 2 in the afternoon when 2 men got into a fight outside a grocery store. Both opened fire. 70-year-old Marilyn Hunt was hit by one of their stray bullets.
She heard the shot and she felt a pain in her leg. So she put the 2 together that, obviously that must be me. She looked and, there was bleeding.
8 hours later in Washington Heights, men shot up a car. Inside was a pregnant 19-year-old woman. She, too, was hit in the leg. Police were back on the scene of a shooting, this time outside Tottenville High School on Staten Island. A group of 5 men fired off at least 5 shots at students, hitting one in the leg.
Just hearing the screams was just bone-chilling, like my heart dropped. But I knew I had to stay calm for her because I needed to make sure she was able to think and act fast and just continue being safe.
And why can't we have a safe city?
Mayor Eric Adams says we can. By Tuesday night, he took questions from the community who pushed him, concerned, telling him and the police commissioner they don't feel safe.
We took over 5,000 guns off the streets of the city of New York, arrested thousands of people. We have a 27-year high for felony arrests in this city. These numbers are unbelievable.
But even the mayor has said stats and numbers don't mean much if New Yorkers don't feel safe.
Unfortunately, that's the state we live in, where there's limited consequences to change behavior.
So the shooting forced a shelter in place, and for the students and staff who heard the gunshots, who saw the student get injured, who had to hide in their classrooms, school is no longer a safe place.
The NYPD made an arrest in connection with a woman whose body was found in a large bin in the driveway of a home in the Port Richmond neighborhood of Staten Island. Officers responded to a 911 call at 245 Heberton Ave in the Port Richmond neighborhood. They found a woman unconscious and unresponsive inside the bin. EMS responded and pronounced her dead at the scene. The NYPD announced that it had arrested Glenn Brancato, 56, of Staten Island. He is charged with the concealment of a human corpse, obstructing governmental administration, and criminal tampering. And yet another incident of violence in New York City's subway system. A man was shoved onto the subway tracks in the Bushwick section of Brooklyn.
A Brooklyn man now under arrest for attempted murder for charging at a man on a subway platform and pushing him onto the tracks. The man suffering a broken collarbone.
We need more protection.
There have been multiple people shoved onto the tracks, so much so that some commuters are now leaning against pillars on the platform to protect themselves.
After seeing that guy pushing someone, it just made me so nervous.
The crime surge continuing over the weekend. A 62-year-old man was punched so hard in a random attack that he fell onto the tracks in the Bronx. In Queens, a man was stabbed at the Roosevelt Avenue and Junction Boulevard station while sitting on the platform. Police have now released these pictures of the alleged suspects. And in Washington Heights, a 14-year-old girl was stabbed on the subway near the station at 191st Street. Also over the weekend, Mayor Adams and Governor Hochul announcing their latest plan to tackle subway crime. Police officers will now work longer shifts, 12-hour tours. Joseph Jackalone is a retired NYPD sergeant and currently an adjunct professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice.
We've already seen the zero tolerance in the subway plan. If you forget, in February, the mayor announced that plan too about how to deal with subway crime. And here we are, 41% later up in crime in the subway, and we're rolling out a new subway plan.
Queens City Councilman Robert Holden believes the mayor is trying, but he is suspicious of the governor's motives.
She controls the MTA, and now she's announcing this program days before an election. She should have done this a year ago.
And finally, in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, a 22-year-old woman says that what should have been a normal trip home from work turned into a terrifying experience. But her love for a famous singer got her to safety.
It makes me sad because, nobody helped me. I did that all by myself, and, they're always up there near the turnstiles, and had they been down by the subway, I don't know, it's now I have to have nightmares about being in the tracks, and had they been down there, I would have never been in the tracks, you know what I mean?
It's the first time this 22-year-old Brooklyn woman, who doesn't want us to use her name, is reliving the night that she says changed her life.
Do you never think you're going to be in a moment where it's I need to live? That's all I could think about. All I could think about is I need to get out.
September 19th was a typical night for her. She says all that was on her mind was getting home and relaxing after a long work day. But when she got off her Crown Heights subway stop, she was suddenly knocked out by a random man. In moments, she was on the ground, kneeled over, and then, even more horrifying, pushed onto the tracks.
Being in the tracks, that's what gives me nightmares. Being down in the tracks, I don't remember, him punching me, I didn't feel any pain. Being in the tracks, that was the most scary thing of my life.
Unbelievably, she says she was able to pull herself up to the platform and sprint out of the station.
I looked like a monster. My face was all swollen. I didn't even know I had a black eye until I looked in the mirror. People were they didn't want me to touch them because they didn't want blood to get on them. I was grabbing at people, screaming.
In the weeks since, she's reflected on where that strength to pull herself up and out of the tracks came from. She says it was an unlikely source.
I love Gwen Stefani. I'm a super fan of her. And she's pulled me on stage so many times.
In fact, she pulled herself up at a recent Vegas show where the stage, she says, was about the same height as the subway platform.
It's because Gwen's called me on stage so many times. That's why my body knew what to do.
Meanwhile, police say the suspect took off after stealing her phone and hasn't been arrested yet. The investigation is still open. Even though she's safe now and is slowly going back to commuting on the subway, she says she's been changed indefinitely.
Think everybody that looks at me is going to hurt me. That's what changed about me. I think I don't trust anyone anymore. I think everyone's going to hurt me now. I think everyone I walk past is going to push me in.
That's this week's Crime in the City.